All right, here we go. Welcome to everybody who's on this call this evening. My name is Sue Nix. I am the president of the Redwood Shores Community Association. Tonight, we are pleased to have our community relations officer, Jesse Castro, and Captain Ashley Osborne present with us to give us information on some topics that have been a concern to the shores. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our two officers. I believe Ashley is going to talk first. And if there's time at the end, we're going to have them answer some of the questions we've received. But you might find that a lot of the answers are going to be in the presentation. So I'll let you guys take it away.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having Jesse and I here. We appreciate the opportunity to, I wish I could say meet with everybody, but at least see everybody. We were asked to kind of generally cover three topics tonight, and so I'll touch on a few of those right now, and then Sergeant Castro will go through a presentation that covers the things that we wanted to talk about in more detail. The things we were asked to cover specifically up front were kind of general overall crime climate and what's occurring in Redwood Shores. Also some of the issues surrounding the fishing issue in the shores, and then some crime safety tips. So I'll start off by saying 2020 and into 2021 has obviously been a little bit of an unusual time and different than previous years. We've seen that in crime trends and the type of crime that is occurring. Not surprisingly, residential burglaries are down significantly during this time period. That's a crime that typically occurs on weekdays during business hours when folks are away at work, and that's when homes are typically burglarized. With COVID and a lot of people working from home, residential burglaries have dropped off significantly. Unfortunately, other areas and other types of crime have increased a little bit. What we did see initially when we went into the lockdown was an increase in commercial burglaries, nighttime primarily, a little bit during the day on some closed businesses, but primarily at night. I think those became targets because folks out there realized, and I think probably correctly, that these businesses were either unstaffed or lightly staffed or staffed at irregular hours and times. And crime could go undetected quite a bit longer. There was a lot lower risk of getting caught. So we did see an uptick in commercial burglaries. That's kind of evened out as businesses have gotten back to a more normal schedule. We're not seeing what I would call a higher level of commercial burglaries. We're still seeing the lower level of residential burglaries. And unfortunately, what crime has transitioned to is more crimes of opportunity. During the day, you're seeing package theft, which I know the Shores has experienced some. You're seeing mail theft at various locations. Also, I know that's an issue the Shores has had to deal with. And then at nighttime, you're seeing burglaries of vehicles and theft of opportunity. Individuals going into carports and garages or unsecured or open backyards and stealing whatever they can get their hands on that's easy to get to. Bikes, electronics out of vehicles, things of that sort. So that's kind of the overall trend we've seen with what's been going on over the past year. It's also been a bit of a challenge because the jails are very restricted on their ability to both accept and hold suspects for us. So a lot of crimes that normally would have involved somebody getting arrested and actually getting booked into jail and being brought in front of a judge before they were released, that's not been the case. We've been citing people out, issuing them a citation to appear in court at a later date for quite a few crimes that in normal times that wouldn't be the case. And that just adds increases the opportunity for crime to occur because the individuals who are predisposed to engage in it are on the streets more and they have more opportunity to engage in the criminal activity. So all those factors have impacted the crime statistics that we've seen, the crime patterns, and then the way we've gone about trying to patrol neighborhoods and the type of things we're looking for. Sergeant Castro has a presentation that's going to kind of dive into a little bit of the specifics regarding overall crime trends throughout the city and then specific to Redwood Shores. I will say this, the good news is Redwood Shores is still the safest neighborhood in Redwood City. We divide the city into 8 beats, and Redwood Shores is one of those 8 beats. It's the 1 beat, and it still has the lowest crime rate. And in fact, as you'll see from the statistics that Sergeant Castro is going to go over, crime in the rest of the city went up a little bit in 2020. I think it was about a 6%, 7% increase, right around there. And we actually had, or maybe that was the decrease in Shores. There was a decrease in the Shores, I think, of about 6%. I forget what the increase was citywide off the top of my head, but Sergeant Castro will get into that through his presentation. So Jesse, if you want to maybe do a brief introduction of yourself and then roll into your presentation.
For sure. Thanks, Captain Osborne. Hi, everyone. I'm Jesse Castro. I recently got promoted to sergeant, so I'll be hitting the streets here with the patrol officers. I'll be supervising the weekend shift, the weekend midnight shift, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night from 6 o'clock to 6 a.m. I'll be the supervisor. I have a team of 7 officers that I'll be supervising. And my first full shift starts this Friday. Prior to that, I've been the community policing officer. I've been in this role now for a little more than a year. And part of those duties include, doing meetings like this, obviously addressing community needs, helping out and overseeing the homeless community issues that we have throughout the city. Also coordinating our community programs that we have here at the Redwood City Police Department. And then also overseeing our social media programs. I'm sure I've talked to some of you through Nextdoor or our Instagram page or Facebook here and there. So I'm kind of the face behind all that stuff. Like I said, I am going to get replaced here in the next 2 weeks or so. And the next person that gets elected, I'm going to be there helping that person out so that hopefully this transition, goes smoothly. And my goal is to have them perform and do an even better job than what I did. But my email is not going to change. I still have anywhere from 15 to 20 years still here at Redwood City PD. My email will always be the same, jcastro@redwoodcity.org. You guys could email me. I'll get back to you guys, and then we could go from there. I'm going to start with the presentation now, Shannon. Hopefully this works. Give me a second. All right. Shannon, you see the Redwood City PD logo with the badge? All right, thank you. All right, so we're going to kick this off. Captain Osborne touched a little bit on this, but here are some 2020 stats that we have. Kicking things off there on top, you can see the calls for service for the 2020 year, and we had about 89,000 calls. In Redwood Shores alone, give or take, there was about 5,657 calls, which are about 6.4% of all the calls that we had. Right below that, you see externally. So those are calls that are generated because somebody calls 911 or something like that. And of the 89,000, 53,000 of those were 911 calls that were called into our dispatch center. Redwood Shores accounted for 2,400 of those and about 4.5%. And then officer initiated. For 2020, officers initiated about 35,000 calls during the year. And that basically could mean that they're doing traffic stops, that they're making patrol checks, that they're initiating the call for service. In Redwood Shores, they amounted for about 3,200 of those officer-initiated calls, which is about 9.2% of all the calls for 2020. Police reports written in 2020 citywide, we had about 6,800, and then in Redwood Shores, 288. Again, 4.2% of everything there. Traffic citations for 2020, 2,300 in Redwood Shores, 148, and so on, and that was about 6.3%. Arrest in 2020, we had 1,304 arrests citywide. In Redwood Shores, we had 20. And then you can see the breakdown here for felony arrest, misdemeanor arrest, and then vehicles towed. So in Redwood Shores, we had 70 felony arrests for 2020. Misdemeanor arrests, we had 13. A total of 21 vehicles were towed, and you guys can see the percentages there on the right. Part one crimes. So part one crimes, the way that the stats here work are they include homicides, rape, robberies, assaults, burglaries, larcenies, motor vehicle thefts. So citywide in 2020, there was 1,910 of those part one crimes reported. The year before, it was a little lower, about 1,795. So pretty consistent, in my opinion. And then, so the difference was a 6.4% increase. Nothing too drastic, which is good in my opinion. Hold on, let me see. And then going back down, of those part one crimes in 2020, 76 of them were in Redwood Shores. The year before that, it was 126. So the number went down. It was actually about a 39% decrease of those part one crimes. And obviously you can see those part one crimes. There's some serious crimes. And the good thing is it looks like there in Redwood Shores, at least for the 2020 year, the numbers went down. So that's a good thing. Captain, before I move on, do you want to say anything further on that?
No, that's fine. And yeah, I definitely undersold the reduction. I think I said 6% in my opening, and there was a 39% reduction 2020 to 2019.
Alrighty, we'll move on. So vehicle collisions, you can see the breakdown here. Citywide, we're going to go with, let's go with the 2020 stats, which is the graph in the middle there. So non-injury vehicle collisions, we had about 239 in Redwood Shores. We only had one. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but it looks like it. Minor injury, 186. And then Redwood Shores, we had 6. And then major injuries, citywide, we had 16. Redwood Shores, we had 2. Fatalities, 0. Looks like citywide and Redwood Shores. Total of injuries for 2020, I'm sorry, total vehicle collisions for 2020 was 441. And in Redwood Shores, looks like we had 9. At least those are the ones that are reported to us. So just keep in mind that vehicle collisions, if nobody's hurt, if people are stopping and exchanging information, it's not necessary that you call the police. So that's probably why the numbers in Redwood Shores area are a lot lower. But that's a good thing, right? Let's keep it that way. And then you guys can see the breakdown there for 2019. Let me see. Yeah, and I'll just move on just for time purposes. The one thing Captain Osborne already mentioned, we always have an officer in the Redwood Shores area. There's always one assigned 24/7. You can see the breakdown here. So we just recently started our new shift back in February 15th. So the current assignments right now during the day shift hours, during the week, the 410 schedule, which is Monday through Thursday, Officer Mike Marchand is assigned to the Redwood Shores area. And then after him, which is swing shift, Officer Dominic Anderson. And then the midnight shift is Officer Daniel Bresnick. So during the weekday, which is Monday through Thursday, we have 100% coverage. On the weekend, which is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have Officer Eric Otterson, who works over in the Redwood Shores area. His shift runs from 6 to 6. Our swing shift starts at 2 o'clock and they end at 2:30. So there's overlap there so that area stays unfilled. However, we still have an officer out there, right? That's Eric Otterson. He works again from 6 to 6. At 6 p.m., we have Officer Aaron Korth, who starts his shift from 6 p.m. all the way to 6 a.m. So again, 100% coverage. I will be supervising Aaron Korth. So I'll make sure that the stuff that's being set out here will be relayed to him so that he could look out for those things during our shifts. So fishing, I know, is one of the big topics. Captain Osborne, I'm going to turn over the mic to you so you could cover these items. I have a bunch of information here. Sue was great. I know that this was put out in the pilot not too long ago. I grabbed a bunch of information that she provided me, threw it in here so you guys could see it again. Captain Osborne, I know, worked hand in hand with Sue Nix to make sure we're all on the same page here, and he'll fill you in with some of the issues and rules and laws regarding fishing and trapping.
Thanks, Jesse. So the first point that I want to make sure everybody understands is that fishing is generally allowed in the lagoon in Redwood Shores. It's not prohibited. It is covered by the Fish and Game Code and some city ordinances. So fishing itself is legal, and even commercial fishing from a properly licensed individual is allowed. So that typically includes it is done through trapping in Redwood Shores. That's the only type of commercial fishing I'm aware of up there, is the small traps that are set. There are prohibitions about where you can fish from, and that's really where some of these issues that have arisen surrounding fishing up in Redwood Shores arise out of. You cannot fish from any area that's designated as a city park. You can fish from city-owned land that's not a city park. Additionally, you can fish from private property if you have permission of the owner to be there, or if it's your property. So what that ends up doing is really eliminating nearly all of the shoreline up in the shores as a legal area to fish from. There's a few spots where you can do it. There's one at the west end of the lagoon down towards Highway 101. There is a small area, and that's really not a very feasible spot to fish from. And there's a bunch of shrubbery and bushes there. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone actually fishing there, but it would not be illegal to do so. You can also fish from some of the area right around where Shell Parkway crosses over the lagoon. It's city-owned property, but not parkland. Again, I don't recall ever seeing or hearing about anyone fishing from those areas, but it's certainly possible, but I don't think that's been a problem. Then there's a few areas in the eastern end of the Redwood Shores area where you can fish from some of the paths or off the paths, rather, not the path itself, that run along some of the waterways that kind of transition out towards the bay. We've got a map that shows where those areas are. And I know Sue was working, I think, with some folks from Public Works to try and update that map and make sure it's as accurate as possible. I went through it looking at the city's GIS system and using satellite imagery in the GIS system, which will show you where property lines are and things of that sort. I did come up with a map that I think is accurate, but I know that was something we're going to work on to make sure that everything I have in there is correct. The real issue with fishing comes from some of the trapping that occurs. I don't know that we get consistently many complaints about recreational fishing up there. The primary issue we have is there's a certain time of year, it's in the fall, typically, where a certain type of fish that is native to the lagoon up there is in abundance, and there are fishermen that like to come in and catch them. They're bait fish that they catch. I believe they're called sucker fish. And we're told from the commercial fishermen that we've spoken to surrounding these issues, they get about $1 per fish, and they can get anywhere between 200 and 400 fish per trap per night when they're fishing. So they've got a lot of financial incentive to try and catch these fish, which is why it becomes a problem. It's a fairly narrow time of year where they're abundant, and that's again in the fall. So it tends to be isolated to a certain time of year where we see this problem. And there's only 2 areas in the entire Bay Area where you can catch these fish. One is Redwood Shores, and the other area is kind of up in the far North Bay, up in Marin County. So it tends to draw a decent number of individuals during that time of year to come down here and try and catch these fish. And the problem seems to be the areas where they want to put their traps can only be accessed most often from private property. And in most of the cases we see it's HOA private property, or they're going onto HOA private property and then through people's backyards, individual private property, to place their traps. They trap at night. And so you have fishermen coming out late at night to place the traps. They leave them in the water 2, 3, 4 hours, and then they come back and retrieve them. And understandably, that causes a lot of concern. If you're a homeowner up there, you're a resident up there, and there's somebody moving near or through your property at that time of night, I don't care what their purpose is, it's going to be disturbing, it's going to be upsetting. We've had some issues in the past when calls like this came into our dispatch center, and they were being dispatched as fishing complaints or illegal fishing, which is a fairly low priority call. And sometimes even in the middle of the night, we can be busy and we don't have officers available. And if it's a lower priority call, we're not going to get an officer out there as quickly as we might like to, and oftentimes won't be able to make contact with the individual, won't be able to locate them. What we've tried to make sure we're doing now through our dispatch center and make sure our officers are educated about the time of year when this occurs and the nature of the behavior is that we treat those like trespassing or prowler calls, which is a higher priority call. Certainly a prowler at nighttime is a high priority call for us. And that way we're going to dispatch resources and officers to those calls at a much faster clip than we do for a low priority call. And from our end, the problem has been with the way the call gets classified and the manner in which we respond. I think we did a pretty good job this year. We kind of had some experience the year before. We had some of the real issues in 2019, 2020. We were a little bit ahead of things, and I think we had our officers and our dispatch up to speed. That's not to say there weren't occasional calls that maybe didn't get handled as expeditiously as we would like. But overall, I think we had a much better outreach and training program with our own staff internally. The other problem that comes with enforcement of this issue and the trespassing at night relates particularly to HOA property. Not any HOA member can act as the agent for the HOA and tell us that somebody is trespassing. We can't take action unless somebody who's responsible for the property, legally responsible for the property, tells us that person is not allowed to be here, they're trespassing. At that point, they get warned. And if they refuse to leave, they could get arrested. And if they come back, they could get arrested. Now, if they come onto an individual's private property, that property owner can do that very easily. That's not a problem. When they go onto HOA property, the law requires us to get that information that they are a prohibited person from somebody designated by the HOA board or like a security guard or something of that sort, or a board member. And there's probably pretty good reason behind this setup. You know, you might have an HOA with hundreds and hundreds of members, and you can't have every single member of the HOA having the power to tell anybody who's not a member of the HOA that they can't come onto that property. That could create a lot of problems. So the law is structured when you're dealing with common property like that to really narrow the group of people who can make that designation and allow us the authority we need to act. And that's been one of the issues we've had with enforcement in the past, even when we are successful in locating and contacting some of these individuals. We can't get the right person on scene to make that designation, to give us that information, to sign a no trespassing order, and for us to either eject them from the property or arrest them if they don't leave. And that's usually not a problem. Generally, when we show up, these guys don't want to hang out and talk to us. We tell them to leave, they leave. Trouble is they come back later when we're not there to retrieve their traps or to set them another night. And if they haven't been given that notice, you kind of have to start all over again, and we have to get dispatched out there. We have to locate them, and then we have to get the right person there to give us the authority to act. And that has been one of the biggest sticking points for us from an enforcement standpoint. Obviously, we check when we do locate these individuals. We'll check to make sure they're properly licensed and properly equipped, and generally they are. It's not that expensive to get a commercial fishing license. These individuals do it for a living. By and large, this isn't something they're doing as a hobby. So they're generally properly licensed. They're generally in possession of the proper gear to do what they're doing. The issue really surrounds the time of night they're doing it and the locations they're going to get access to the water to place their traps. It's almost always, from what we can see, going across HOA property or private property. I think everything else in here, Jess, I've covered just through what I was talking about. If you want to leave it up there for a second, folks can look through it a little bit.
Yeah. And Shannon, this is being recorded too, so if people want to access it, it's here. Sue also has this information. Like I said, I got this. I'm sorry?
It's on our website too.
Yeah, for sure. So it's information that hopefully you guys have all seen. But thank you, Captain. I'm going to move on here. So I'm going to start covering some of the hot topics that are hot topics citywide. Captain Osborne mentioned earlier that part of the problem with the crime going on right now is our inability to put people in jail, and that's a true statement. COVID has really made things difficult for not just Redwood City, but every agency in the state of California or the United States for that matter. They're obviously trying to keep people safe, try to keep people out of jail to prevent this, virus from spreading and stuff like that. So, so overall, the person that knows this is the criminal. They know that if they do get arrested or if they get stopped, or whatever the case is, the chances of them going to jail right now are actually pretty slim. Instead of us having the ability to take them to jail, what we do most of the time now is we issue them a criminal citation with a promise to appear in court. And that court date, sometimes it's a month out, 2 months out. At one point in time, it was even a year out when COVID was at its worst. So they know that. They obviously communicate to one another. And here we are dealing with a bunch of things that's driving community members crazy. So one thing I want to start off with is auto thefts. Auto thefts have risen in Redwood City, but everywhere else too. And I talked to a vehicle theft task force officer not too long ago, and I was like, "Hey guys, what the heck is going on? Can you guys help us out here? Or why is this going crazy?" And he basically told me exactly what I'm telling you guys. These criminals know that they're not going to jail. So if that's the case, what can we do to protect ourselves, right? So here, the basic thing that we can all do is obviously lock your cars. Please lock your cars and roll up your windows. What these people are doing is a lot of them they're just on foot, walking down the street, checking doors, and they'll find one that's open, and then they'll make it, they'll end up stealing your car. A lot of people are still warming up their cars in the morning with the key in the ignition, and then they go inside, come out 5 minutes later, and their car is gone. That practice, guys, please stop it. Don't make it easy for people. But you can see here are some tips. Lock your vehicle and remove your keys. Install an anti-theft system if you don't already have one. Most new cars already have it. Park your vehicle in well-lit areas, or preferably in your garage. Do not leave valuables in your vehicle or in your truck bed. Use a wheel lock. That's kind of old school, but it's still an option. And then obviously do not leave your vehicle running unattended. If these people want to steal your car, they're going to steal your car, and there's very little that you can do to stop it. But these little things will make it just that much more difficult for them. So please try to do it. Be on the lookout for your neighbors. Install cameras if you can to help us, in these investigations. But yeah, the best bet, if you can, park it in your garage, and that's, in my opinion, the best way to prevent these auto thefts from happening. I'll move on to the next one here. Catalytic converter thefts. This has also been going on everywhere, not just Redwood City. It's happening all throughout the state of California. Here on top, I have car burglars are often an essential piece of your car. A catalytic converter can contain valuable platinum, palladium, rhodium, or gold. If taken, you could end up spending $400 to $2,000 for a replacement, if not more. And then commonly targeted vehicles include Honda Elements, Toyota Camrys, Toyota Prius, Honda CR-V. I want to give you guys a quick scenario, and I'm not kidding. So this past week, in front of the sports basement, this was a call for service, probably happened around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The owner of a Honda Element parked right in front of the sports basement, literally in the first parking space available. This is the middle of the day, 1 or 2 o'clock. The suspects drive up. They end up cutting the catalytic converter from the Honda Element in broad daylight. There's people walking around. They kind of look and they're suspicious as far as what's going on, but they end up doing it. It takes them probably a total of 3 minutes to do this. It's that easy. It's that quick. And these people seem to not care when or where or what is going on. That was the first that I saw in broad daylight. Obviously, it's happening more at nighttime and stuff like that. but it takes them a matter of minutes to cut off the catalytic converter and take off with it. Again, some ways to prevent catalytic converter theft: park in well-lit areas again, park close to building entrances, although I just gave you an example of how that doesn't help because they're becoming way more brave, but it does help in some instances. If you have a personal garage, keep your car parked in there, please. Obviously with the door shuts. Add video surveillance to wherever it is that you're parking your car. Some things that you can also do, if you have a mechanic that you regularly see, let them know that you're aware that people are cutting off catalytic converters. You know, is there a way that you can maybe weld it onto my car or add some type of frame around it to prevent, you know, people from easily stealing it? You can also engrave your car's VIN number on it, and then adjust the security system on your car if you have one installed. For us, law enforcement, it's very difficult for us to track these catalytic converters. My understanding is it's nearly impossible. They don't have any markings to trace it back to the vehicle or the vehicle owner. So that's why, you know, engraving a VIN or something like that will help officers link it to the owner if we end up, you know, stopping somebody with 5 catalytic converters in the beds of a pickup truck or something like that. So anything that you can do to help yourself, please do it. Anything that you can do to help us, you know, like the VIN or putting a cage or parking it in an area where there's cameras, that definitely helps us. But these things are happening. They're and like I said, it's not just Redwood City specific, it's everywhere. So just try to be on the lookout for that stuff. The next one, auto burglaries. So my captain mentioned earlier, this is a crime of opportunity. In most instances, what I'm seeing when it comes to people breaking into cars and stealing things from cars, the cars are unlocked for the most part. Again, these people are just walking down the street, checking doors. And almost every single block, they're going to find 1, if not 2, unlocked cars. They go, they take whatever they want, and they take off. Yes, they're still breaking windows and stuff like that, but it's easy. At night, they just walk down the street and they will find one. It's just a matter of time. So again, another simple tool or trick: lock your car, please. The majority of vehicles burglarized are unlocked. Park in well-lit areas. Many vehicle burglaries occur at night. Hide or remove all valuables from your vehicle. So instead of keeping them in your front seat, at least put them in the trunk, right? A little harder to see. Close windows and doors, obviously. Alarm your car if you can. And then one thing that will give you a lot of peace of mind is if you have those little garage door openers that you put on the visor, keep it in your purse, keep it in your bag, take it with you. Don't keep it in your car, because then they also have access to your home, right? Some commonly stolen items that we see when they do these auto burglaries, obviously purses, wallets. They're stealing money, change, cell phones, tools. You know, a lot of people will keep their tools in their trucks. They're taking the tools, and you know that easily add up to thousands of dollars. Gym bags, firearms. Sometimes some people keep their firearms in their car for, you know, an hour or a couple hours while they go somewhere and they get stolen. Sunglasses, and then keys and remotes. So again, the biggest thing that you can do to protect yourself is lock your car. Lock your car every single night. Make it a habit before you go to bed. Hit that lock key or hit that lock button on your remote and hope to God. All right. Another thing that we've been seeing is bike thefts. This is again not specific to Redwood City, but it's happening in Redwood City as well. We're not immune to it by any means. The biggest thing, if you remember anything about bike thefts and ways to help yourself and to help the police, is write the VIN number from the bike, and 2, try to take a picture of it. I can't tell you how many people that I've taken reports from, they never had VINs. I probably had 1 person that has a VIN number. People say, well, I got the receipt. The stores usually don't track the VIN numbers. They're more worried about the money and stuff like that. Even for these high valued bicycles, they might be able to help you sometimes, but in my experience, they usually tend not to track these serial numbers for people. So track it yourself. Take a picture of it, take a picture of the bike, and that helps us 9 times out of 10. If well, not 9 times out of 10, but if it's a very distinctive bicycle, what we end up doing is what we'll do on patrols, we'll send an email or we'll send a text message to everybody working, hey, be on the lookout for this bicycle, and it'll stick out. Sometimes we get lucky, we find it, sometimes we don't. An area where we're seeing a lot of bike thefts occur is in apartment complexes. They'll either leave their bikes in the parking structure, or these like large new apartment complexes have like a apartment bike storage area, and it's secure and all that stuff. But these people are finding their ways in there. They're breaking in. They're bypassing that lock mechanism and making their way in there. And then when they're in there, then they'll cut the lock. They have access to not just your bike, but a whole bunch more bikes, and then they take off. This seems to be the more current trend right now, at least that I'm seeing in Redwood City, is they're going into these new apartment buildings that are going up throughout the city, and they're targeting these bike storage areas. So if you live in these areas or you know somebody that does, my best recommendation for them would be to take your bike up to your room, keep it in there. I would avoid these areas. I would avoid them completely if you can. But again, the biggest thing, please try to write down those serial numbers. When we do encounter bicycles, we're always checking the serial numbers. And like I said, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, there's no record of it. Let me see. All right, so package thefts. I, just like you guys, shop Amazon and Target and everything else. And sometimes the package is sitting here in front of my house. And it happens, right? We can't always be home, but there are a few things that you can do to try to combat this and deter package theft. One, you try to track it, right? And that helps because you could try to be at home when the package arrives, or know that it's going to arrive within this time, and try to make it home as soon as possible. You could ask that a signature be requested upon delivery. That way, UPS or FedEx, they don't just leave it there. They have to get a signature. You could also change the package to be, so that instead of it arriving at your house when nobody's there, maybe that your neighbor lives, maybe your neighbor is there all the time. Maybe request that it gets shipped there. Just talk to your neighbor and let them know that, I'm going to be sending a package over your way. Hopefully you guys have that good relationship, or a relative or something like that. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot more is ship it to your place of employment. The front desk can take the package and then secure it. And that way, somebody is always going to take it, somebody that you trust, rather than leaving it at your home for hours on end while you're at work. A lot of us are working from home right now, so we have the ability to grab these packages, but it might be sitting at your front door for hours on end. One thing I would recommend is install like a Wi-Fi enabled camera that gives you motion alerts when somebody's at your front door, so that that these packages arrived. UPS, for the most part, they don't knock on your door, they just leave it at the front step and take off. But there's a lot of very good camera systems out there that will give you those motion alerts. That way, while you're busy zooming away in your office, you'll get that motion alert, and you could turn off the video camera for a second, go run and get it, and then come right back. But that definitely helps. And then, a lot of stores offer the ability to, they have like a pickup box there at the store. I know, like Home Depot, for example, if you order a product from them, they'll put it in this box. You go there, and instead of going to the clerk or checkout areas, you just go directly to the box, get your item, and take off. Just there's a lot of ways that a lot of different things that people can do now to prevent these packages from being at your front doors. I've heard of supposedly people following UPS trucks. As soon as they drop off a package, then they come up behind, get that package, and take off. I've heard of those stories. I've never personally seen it, but I mean, it's easy nowadays, right? I mean, UPS trucks, Amazon trucks, FedEx, they all stand out. We all know what's in there. And we all know what they're going to do. They're going to go to somebody's home, leave a package, and take off. So now it's a matter of what do we do? What can we do to protect our items? How can we, to protect our items from being stolen? So here are a few tips. Hopefully you guys can see that. I don't think I made the print too small, but it should be there. Let me see what's next here. So as a community policing officer, I deal with a lot of parking complaints. I deal with homeless issues throughout the city, garbage complaints, you name it. Here in Redwood City, we have this great app. You could either download the app if you want, and if you don't have a smartphone or an app, you could go to the City of Redwood City website and click on, there's like a My Redwood City icon there, and you could go into this website, and this is where you can make any type of complaint for the most part that you see. I'm going to click on it. Let me see if this will let me, and I will show you guys how it works. All right. Shannon, you following me here? Yes, can you see it? Did you lose my...
It's still on the presentation.
Okay, let me see here. Okay, I don't think it's going to work, but let me, okay, hold on. A second here. It's still on the presentation right now, Shannon?
Yeah, it's still on the PowerPoint.
Okay.
But at least now we see the program.
Yeah, give me 1 second. All right. So going on here, if you go on the city website, My Redwood City is great for several things. One, you can report graffiti, you can report illegal dumping, noise complaints, parking in red zones, potholes, public trees, glass, debris in the street, parking meters, street lights, traffic signals. It's basically like a one-stop shop to let somebody within the city know that there's some type of issue. Once you make a complaint, there's somebody that works at City Hall that will then filter these messages and send them to the appropriate agency so that they can be addressed. They'll either get sent to Public Works, they'll get sent to the PD, they'll get sent to the library or whatever the case is. And then from there, here at the police department, Captain Osborne gets a lot of these. He'll address them, or he'll send them down my way, or I'll get some, and then I'll talk to parking enforcement, or I'll talk to the motor officers, and so on and so forth. It's actually a really effective system. On our end, we check these all the time. I know if there's any parking issues or traffic issues, our parking enforcement officers are all over this. They're checking this on a daily basis, and they try to address every issue as they come, almost on the same day. Other issues that are more complicated, a lot of times they end up in my plate, and I will either one, go out there and deal with it myself, make a phone call, see what we can do as the police department to help out, whether it be a neighbor dispute or something like that. And it seems to work, from my opinion, flawlessly. I work hand in hand with Public Works. And they're also, like, if they run into an obstacle, they'll sometimes call me to figure out how we can tackle it together, or if they have a question, we try to figure it out. But it's, in my opinion, if you're not set up with My Redwood City, or if you're unaware of what it is, go on here, go on the city website, and just poke around with it, and you'll probably see that if you've had an issue, this is probably something that you could have used to address it. I don't think I want to say anything more about this. Captain Osborne, do you want to say anything more about any of this stuff?
Yeah, it is a good system. I do want to point out, though, that it is not live monitored. So if it's something that you need immediate assistance with, an example is a parking issue where a vehicle is blocking your driveway and you can't get out, and you need somebody to come deal with it right away, you're going to want to call us. If it's an ongoing issue, a continuing issue, My Redwood City, the platform is a good tool for that. Another common use of it that we see that doesn't work very well is someone will report a noise complaint for an ongoing noise complaint that's happening right now. 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and there's a party nearby or something like that that's causing a disturbance. they'll report it via the My Redwood City system. It's not going to get looked at until the next morning. So by then the problem has resolved itself and it's too late for us to get involved. So it's primarily for something that's a mid to long-term problem, and it's not live monitored. If you need help right away, your best bet is still to call either the non-emergency number if that's the appropriate avenue to get hold of us, or 911 if it is an emergency.
Yes. And that is all the info that I have. Shannon, can you see this slide where it says Sergeant Jesse Castro at the top? Okay. So the one number I want to make sure you guys all have is the community policing desk number. That's my desk number, 780-7104. I could help you guys out with just about anything. You know, I could point you guys in the right direction. I could try to help you guys out if it's a parking issue or something like that. Or if you have a question about what's going on at the PD and you just want somebody to talk to and kind of figure out what's going on, give me a call. I will get back to you within a day or so, and we'll discuss the issue at hand. If you have an issue like that noise complaint that's happening at 1 o'clock in the morning, our non-emergency number is right there. That's 650-780-7118. That goes directly to Redwood City PD dispatch. That's the non-emergency number. Obviously, if it's an emergency, you're going to call 911. My email there, jcastro@redwoodcity.org. That's not going to change until I retire, and that's 20 years away. So you guys can always send me an email and ask a question if you guys need it. And then there below, Captain Osborne, his email's there, and I learned from him. So we're here for you guys. We're here to help, and we're here to answer any questions. Sue, that's what I have. Anything else you'd like to have covered since we're here?
I think we have time to answer some of the questions that we have, if that is okay with you.
Sure.
Shannon, do you want to let some out of the bag?
So we can have people submit questions through chat. I know we got a few submitted along with the registrations, but I don't have those in front of me.
I have a question that is posed to me all the time. And when I looked up at the chart and it showed how many traffic citations that were given out in a whole year, honestly, it didn't seem like that many for the problems that we have out here. And I mean, I would say most of the people on this line are extremely frustrated by people not obeying the laws out here, you know, stopping at the stop signs, racing around. And we've been asking and asking, please, to have more police giving out citations. And the amount that it showed on the chart doesn't look like that much. So how are we going to get that underhand?
So I'll handle this one, Jesse. A couple of things. The numbers for 2020 are probably a little skewed compared to normal. There was a period of time where we were not doing proactive traffic stops because of COVID. We were trying to reduce all officer citizen interactions, and there was probably about a 4-month period out of the year where we were doing very little proactive traffic enforcement unless we observed a significant safety violation. So that's part of it. I have directed our traffic unit to spend about 10% of their time, each officer, up in the shores, and to log that time so that we're making sure that they're spending some time up there and not just spending all their time down in the main part of the city. This year so far, they've been able to meet that goal. They've also conducted 13, and sorry, I'm looking down at some information I've written down here, 13 separate enforcement operations up in the shores, and written 85 citations. And this was probably as of about 2 weeks ago in February. So 85 citations in the first month and a half of the calendar year. So we're getting back to doing more proactive police work. We started to get back to that towards the mid and later part of 2020. We are trying to make sure that we're dedicating a certain amount of our traffic officer time up in Redwood Shores. But we've only got a limited number of resources, and we have to disperse them around the city, equally, or it's not even equally. We have to focus where the bigger problems are. And we're largely driven by our traffic collision numbers when we try and identify areas that really need a lot of additional traffic enforcement. And the Shores is quite low in that area. I know there's problems with people speeding. We've had that, as long as I've worked here on Marine and Redwood Shores Parkways. I don't know that we're ever going to get that to stop. You've got those, open straight roadways, and it just seems to encourage people to get a little heavy with the pedal in the car. We are, making efforts to take enforcement action up there. And I know the other issue is also stop signs. And that is one of the areas we've asked our traffic officers to target when they're up there, to focus on the stop sign violations. Things are very skewed up there right now too, as well, because of Oracle, which brings in a lot of individuals every day, along with Electronic Arts and some of the larger companies up there, with those companies operating almost exclusively on a stay-at-home basis. It's kind of skewed a lot of our data, including, I think, the traffic collisions. The drop-off you saw, that's about the only way I can explain it, where I think we went down to one non-injury collision reported. I'm sure part of it is fewer people reporting collisions just because of COVID. People were hesitant to contact us and have face-to-face contact and that sort of thing. But I think the traffic related to the businesses up there has been significantly reduced. I imagine that's starting to come back. I know it is in other parts of the city. I'm curious to see what the long-term impact of Oracle moving out of there is going to have, and how fast those buildings get reoccupied, and by what type of business. But we are allocating resources up there, and we are issuing citations. And the traffic collision data shows that, for at least the time being, the safety issues up there are relatively low.
So I have a few questions queued up for you. One piggybacking on that, because this is probably one of your quicker answers, is, do those traffic stops listed include fix-it ticket citations?
The overall citations does, yeah, that's both. That's the total number of citations. Officers do sometimes stop just for a equipment violation or something that would be a fix-it ticket. They also sometimes stop for a moving violation and then choose to issue either a correction citation for a fix-it, as a little bit of a middle ground between giving a person a moving violation, which is a little bit more significant of a penalty, both financially and with your insurance company and so forth. It's a point on your license, whereas a fix-it ticket isn't. So that is a tool that officers sometimes use to have that contact, make a point with somebody, but give them a little bit of a break. But that overall, I know that 85 number certainly includes some fix-it tickets, and I would assume the 2020 numbers that we gave you probably do as well.
We've been getting reports of more of those happening recently with regard to front license plates. So if that was something that is going to continue happening, we may want to let people know in advance. Save everybody a little bit of
and I'd be curious. Sure, and I'd be curious to know if how many of those were stops purely because they noticed that there was no front license plate, or if they were stopped for a different reason and the officer instead cited for that. I imagine it's a little bit of both, I would guess, but I don't have that information. We don't get that deep down into it when we do our analysis with our officers. We can give them some direction, but we don't have the ability to analyze what occurs on every single traffic stop.
Sure. What is the process for dogs that are not on a leash in areas where a leash is required?
Well, it is a city code violation, and we can issue an infraction citation for that. We have to actually witness the violation. We have occasionally had some officers focus on that when we've been getting complaints at certain areas. It's an ongoing complaint both in Redwood Shores and other parts of the city. And as with a lot of things, it's prioritization. And if we don't have an officer readily available when somebody calls in for something like that, that's going to be a fairly low priority call. And it could be a while before an officer gets out there. And oftentimes we'd end up missing the individual. They're gone by the time we get there. But we have had instances where we have had officers issue citations for that when we are able to get to the scene in time and locate the individual. But it is fairly infrequent where we're successful in doing that.
Okay. I know I have already emailed you about this. We've already started the conversation, but with schools reopening soon, can you share how you're partnering with us to ensure that pedestrians and cyclists stay safe, being
Sure.
that there's
Well,
an AM PM model?
We'll soon probably start doing some of the traditional outreach that we normally do at the beginning of the year, reminding everybody the school's back in session. We'll also, once the schools start operating, use our traffic officers to hit the different schools at their start times and dismissal times to make sure that their presence is visible and that folks will remember that they need to follow the rules and do some education. Typically for the first couple of weeks when school's back in session, we go relatively easy on issuing the citations and try and do a lot of warnings and education. And then after that, we switch to a more strict enforcement model. This year is going to be a challenge because the schools, from what I understand, I know every district's a little different, but they're staggering start times. There might be a morning session and an afternoon session. So you might now have 2 start times and 2 dismissal times that we now have to account for. So it's going to spread our resources thin. We're not going to be able to have officers at every school during every dismissal or start time. So we'll try and what we usually try and do is create a schedule so that we're making sure that we hit every school a little bit during those first couple of weeks to kind of just get the word out, let folks know that we're out there, that we're watching, and do some education. We will do our best to do that again this year. But again, I think we're going to be stretched even a little more thin than usual with respect to that because of the multiple start and end times. We are trying to work with our contractor who does the crossing guard service for us and find out what their ability to provide the service is going to be this year. We need to get a lot of information from the school district regarding what their schedules are going to be. I think it's going to be a challenge to get the normal service we do from this company. A lot of their employees are older folks, more vulnerable to COVID, probably not that interested, or at least as interested as they normally would be in being out and mixing in public. So my anticipation is that we're not going to be able to provide the same level of crossing guard service that we have in the past for the remainder of this school year. I'm hopeful that by next school year, we're much more back on track, close to a normal model, both from a school scheduling standpoint, where we're dealing with primarily 1 start and dismissal time for the most part, and then the ability to staff the crossing guard locations that we normally staff. It's going to be a bit of a moving target, and it doesn't help that we're so close to the end of the school year. I anticipate we're going to have some folks who might normally be interested in trying to help out say, well, I don't want to do it for 6 weeks or whatever the remainder of the school year is. I'll just wait till the school year starts next year to get back involved with that. So it's something that we're going to have to work with the schools individually to assess and look at what the traffic patterns are, the pedestrian patterns are, and we'll probably have to rely on some school cooperation and parental volunteers to get staffing like we do normally. That's just going to be the reality. We'll get as much as we can out of the company that we contract with. Unfortunately, there's only one company in the Bay Area that does crossing guard services, so it's not like we have a lot of choices, or that there's a competitor out there that this company needs to worry about taking their contracts from them. So it's going to be, I think this year is going to be a bit of a struggle, particularly at the beginning, as we have to figure out how to get these various locations staffed and what's going to be the safest, most efficient way to do that.
Thank you. I will definitely follow up with you as we get information.
Sure. I look forward to talking about it.
Next question is, what other tips can you give us as citizens to assist law enforcement and help keep Redwood Shores community safe?
I think Jesse covered a lot of great information in his presentation, but the number one thing that I think helps keep a community safe is get to know your neighbors, get to know everyone's patterns, who you normally see in the neighborhood, who you don't, It'll help you identify something that looks suspicious or out of place, and allow you to give us information if we need to get out there and do an investigation and look into something. So get to know your neighbors, pay attention to what's going on in your neighborhood. Don't be afraid to give us a call if you have some concerns about something. We're happy to come out and look into things. One of the bigger issues right now, as Jess talked about, is package theft, and that is one of the things that we've had more consistently in the shores. That and bicycle thefts are the two things that when I looked at the statistics and the theft statistics, most of the thefts, the majority of them were bicycle thefts. So lock up your bicycles, keep them out of sight. Most crooks are opportunists, and they're looking for the low-hanging fruit. And the way to keep yourself safe is make sure that you're not one of those pieces of low-hanging fruit. So, kind of harden the target a little bit, make sure your valuables are out of sight, keep good records, and again, get to know your neighbors, get to know your community, and don't be afraid to give us a call and have us come out and check things out for you.
Yeah, if I could add just one thing, contact us, please. Contact especially the community policing officer. I play such a big role on really trying to help those out in the community when help is needed. If it's a traffic issue, I talk to motor officers all the time. If it's a parking issue, I talk to them. I'm going to briefings and I'm talking to the patrol officers and letting them know the issues that I'm hearing. And there's a few ways to reach out to the community policing officer. You guys got the number 780-7104. You could contact us on Nextdoor. We're on Nextdoor. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Private message us. Keep us in the loop. If we don't know, it's going to be a little hard for us to help you. But if we start knowing and learning of these issues, there's ways that we could jump ahead and try to prevent some of these crimes and stuff from happening. So let us know.
I have another thing that's come up a lot, if I can throw in, and it's kind of to Ashley. We hear that we have a patrol officer out here 24/7 as much as possible, unless something serious is going on downtown. But, and then we hear that, oh, well, the traffic will come up when they can, and that we're not an area that's needed that often. Can you kind of explain what is the patrol officer that's supposedly here 24/7 doing the whole time? When our greatest issues are the situation with the traffic and that kind of stuff. Because again, we're always told there's somebody out here 24/7, but then when you call, it could take an hour, if even that, for somebody to come. Redwood Shores isn't that big, so we're trying to understand.
Yeah. And let me clarify that. We assign somebody up. We assign someone to that beat and make sure it is filled 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, meaning that there is somebody that is their designated patrol area. We typically on a patrol shift have anywhere between 6 and 8 officers on duty because we have 8 beats. There are some shifts that are more heavily staffed because it's a busier time of day, and we'll be able to fill all 8 beats. And then there's some shifts where we're not able to fill all 8 beats. We'll only have, again, as few as 6 officers on. So a couple beats will go unfilled, and an officer will be assigned to cover 2 beats. We don't ever do that with the shores. We always assign somebody to the shores as their primary responsibility because of the geographical isolation from downtown Redwood City, the main part of the city. So we try and make sure that we have somebody up there as much as possible. Having said that, most of or a great number of our calls are 2-officer calls. And so officers get pulled off their beat to go assist other officers on other beats. And that happens with the 1-beat officer as well. So there are times where the 1-beat officer is pulled down to help the 2-beat, the 3-beat, the 4-beat. When things get particularly busy in the city, the beats get completely scrambled because when there's priority calls that come in, you have to send the available officer. You could have a 1-beat officer dispatched to the 8-beat, which is the Emerald Shores area, or the Emerald Hills area rather, for instance. So that happens. And when you're finding those longer response times, that's probably what's happening. And that happens for every beat in the city. That's not unique to Redwood Shores. In fact, with COVID and the change in traffic patterns, we've actually been a little bit, it's a little easier to get up to the shores when we don't have those heavy rush hour traffic jams that we've had in the past. That was one thing we really had to focus on at times when you had extremely heavy traffic on 101 is be very careful about pulling that officer out of Redwood Shores because they can't get back up there quickly if something happens. That's a little looser with COVID. Things have been a little better on that front. But while there is somebody assigned, that does not mean they are physically there the entire shift. They do get pulled down to the city, just like other officers do get pulled up there. So you might find some days when you get an officer, you don't get your assigned beat officer. You're getting the 2 beat officer or the 4 beat officer or somebody from the west side, which would be the 5, 6, or 7, the 5, 6, 7, or 8 beats. So that does happen. And again, on some of the shifts, our staffing can be fairly light, and it can take longer to get an officer there, particularly later at night. Our staffing levels go down. During the day, the staffing levels are higher. We have more options. We have more overlap between the shifts, as Jesse mentioned when he showed you the slide. On the Monday through Thursday side of the week, the 410, where the officers work four days a week, 10 hours a day. The swing shift runs from 2 to midnight. The day shift is 6 to 4, and the graveyard shift comes on at 9, and they go till 7 a.m. So you have, for parts of the day, you have just the day shift on. For a chunk of the day, you have the day shift and the swing shift. Same thing happens at night. There's a chunk of the day where you have both swing shift and the graveyard shift on. But those times where we only have one shift on and there is no overlap, that's when we can get stretched thin very quickly. You can have a call that might draw the attention of 2, 3, 4 officers when you've only got 6 on duty. That takes all your resources to one problem. And of course, that's when a lot of times other calls come out and we can't get to them as quickly as we would like. So when you see those delays, that's typically happening. Now, with respect to the patrol officers doing traffic enforcement, they do some of that, but that's not their primary focus. One of the issues is it's difficult to do traffic enforcement working the way you kind of need to work the shores in a patrol car. The motorcycles are much better equipped and the motor officers are better equipped to work traffic up there. They're smaller, they can tuck into out of the way areas, they can monitor intersections more easily. They're equipped with the radar that you need to typically write speeding violations in the shores. Keep in mind, like a patrol officer who doesn't have a radar with them, and most of them don't, to issue a speeding citation, we have to follow the vehicle. We have to get a tail. We have to pace the vehicle. And that can be hard to do in the shores. One, we're very visible. There's not a lot. It's not easy to spot a cop in your rearview mirror in the shores. 2, it's not the safest thing to do because now we're speeding as well. So you have a speeding vehicle and a speeding police car behind it, which isn't the best situation. And then the distances involved, the distance that we need to pace somebody to get a good read on their speed to actually get a provable traffic violation. Sometimes that can be difficult because people tend to do high speeds for short distances in between stop signs and things like that. So the patrol officers just aren't as well equipped as the traffic officers are to do that enforcement, which is why I've tried to push our traffic officers to spend a designated percentage of their time up there every single week so that we're getting consistent enforcement and a consistent presence. And I'll continue to push that. I know the high visibility matters, one, so that you folks see that we're up there and issuing citations, and 2, it deters others. When they see somebody else pulled over and lights on and someone's getting a ticket scratched, it gets everybody's attention and reminds them they need to follow the rules of the road. So we'll continue to do that and try and focus our traffic officers on getting up there, because that's going to be our best tool to addressing the 2 primary concerns in the shores, which are the speed violations and the stop sign violations.
Next question. Per Redwood City Public Works, there are homeless people camping out around the shores. Does our CPD view this as a problem? And if so, what measures are being taken to address it?
I'll tackle this, Captain. There have been some homeless folks around the shores area as of late. I'm not aware of any. I'm sure there probably is 1 or 2 that I've missed. However, when we do learn of them, out in the shores, for the most part, I've been doing most of the contacts, and I've been working with Public Works to either move them along to a different area or try to get them, shelter services, at Maple Street Homeless Shelter or something like that. But out in the shores, because it's out there and it's usually an isolated person, it's usually 1 person or 2, it's easier for me to handle. Whereas in downtown Redwood City, we're dealing with, 20, 30, 40, 50 So I need additional help. But this past year, I think I've dealt with 2 people out in Redwood Shores. One was located like on the trail that leads from like Bear Island to Redwood Shores, and that issue was addressed. And then another one was located closer to Redwood Shores Parkway, but that's also been addressed. So as far as I know, if you know of any, please let me know, and then we'll look into it. But as of now, I think we're good.
Thank you.
And if I could briefly touch on some of the issues with the transients and the encampments that get set up. Our ability to directly address that is somewhat limited. The transients that tend to set up these longer term encampments are very good at finding soft spots with respect to where they put their encampments. If they're on private property, very easy to handle. The property owner can tell us that they're trespassing and we can get rid of them. If they're on city property, fairly easy to get them moved along because we as the police department have the ability to act as an agent for the city and move them off of city property, although that's getting more difficult with some of the court decisions that have come down. It's not as easy as it once was. The real problem we run into is when they end up getting on state property or federal property. And you've got some federal property out there by the shores, the Don Edwards regional area, which is federal. And then there's a reason you see all these encampments along the freeways, because that is state land and that's Caltrans. And if you don't have somebody from the state acting as the agent saying, hey, these people are trespassing, they can't be here, we can't take enforcement action. So, and that's a challenge all around the country. You'll notice you drive around the Bay Area, again, there's no coincidence, there's no magic as to why they're all along the freeways. It's because they know it's a soft spot. They know that the state resources are stretched thin, and they know the local law enforcement is limited in their ability to compel them to get off that land. So it's a constant battle. We do work with Caltrans and the federal authorities when we can to try and address these encampments on some of these areas. And I think in the shores, they're typically on the federal land. Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Maybe a little bit on the easements by the freeway. But that's one of the limiting factors for us is we just don't have the authority to handle it strictly on our own. We're reliant on other agencies to come out and work with us and give us the authority we need to clean up some of these encampments.
Our next question is, can you explain what may be impacted on police and safety services as a result of the City Council's discussions regarding police funding?
Yeah, I'll tackle this one. So we have had a budget cut this year, although the cut we had was commensurate with the same cut that I think every other city department had, with the exception of fire. I'm not sure exactly what fire's final number was, but pretty much every department in the city took about a 10% budget cut due to economic fallout from COVID and some other things. Right now, we're doing okay with our staffing. But as time goes on, we're going to get stretched more thin. We were able to absorb a lot of the cuts that we need to absorb here at the police department by not filling vacancies that we have. And we can maintain the level of service we have without filling those vacancies for a period of time. But over time, if this continues and we still face these same level of cuts, we're going to see staffing cuts, and we're going to see shifts with, maybe instead of 6 officers on them, you have 5 officers, or instead of having 4 officers assigned to our motor unit, we'll have 3, or instead of having 8 detectives, we'll be down to 7. And there's a reduction in our ability to address problems when we lose those numbers. What we really lose is the flexibility and the ability to address a lot of the quality of life issues. We're usually able to maintain our focus on the higher priority, immediate public safety concerns. But we lose the ability to do some of that extra service that we like to do, the stuff that Jesse used to do when he was the community policing officer, and that his successor will do for him. It becomes harder to do those things when we have those staffing cuts and when they stick around long term. So, for the time being, we're keeping our heads above water, and we're not having to significantly alter our service delivery model. But that could change over time as we go longer periods of time with these unfilled vacancies.
Our next question is, with the rise in anti-Asian violence and racism around the country, and especially in California, what is happening locally in Redwood City and the Bay Area? What is being done to ensure safety and educate the public on how to be an upstander when something does happen?
Yeah, I can't speak to the larger Bay Area because I do know there's some cities and areas in the Bay Area where this has been a significant problem. We have not seen a significant increase in hate crimes of any sort directed at any particular ethnicity in Redwood City over the past year. That's a fairly rare type of crime to happen in Redwood City. We don't get a lot of those. We're fortunate that we have, I think, a very diverse and tolerant community, and we just don't see some of the problems you see in other parts of the Bay Area. As always, we try and get the message out to the community about tolerance and supporting each other. And I think we've done a fairly good job with that. But I think most of the credit goes to our community and the fact that we just have a by and large, a very diverse, very tolerant, and fairly law-abiding citizenry and residents here in Redwood City.
We have a few questions that have come up about your awareness and response plans with regards to the transition at the Town Place Suites as that opens up for senior and homeless housing.
Right. So that is not, if I'm thinking of the right hotel, that one's not directly in our jurisdiction. So we don't have a lot of direct control over what's going on there. And I don't have a lot of insight into what the timeline is there. There's another location in Redwood City down in the main part of the city that they're looking at using potentially as a shelter. As that, and I don't know what the timeline is for that right now. Either the one that's close to Redwood Shores, the Redwood City portion of the shores, or the hotel that they're talking about transitioning downtown. Obviously, it's something we're going to have to look at and assess as we start to see who's living there and what the makeup is, what's the demographic of the population there, and what type of activity are they engaged in. So that's something we're going to have to monitor and pay attention to. I don't have a lot of information about what the timeline is or what we're expecting that to look like right now.
Can I add a little bit to that, sir?
Sure, Justin, if you know something, by all means.
I don't know much about the one that's opening up there in Redwood Shores area. I do know that the other one that's opening up over here on El Camino is, I believe it's now open, but it's slowly building up. And what I do know about it is I had a meeting today with our homeless outreach team, and it's going to be, let me see. So the Samaritan House, their main office is over in San Mateo. They're running that facility over on El Camino. And I spoke to some of the managers there, and they're eager to talk with us and kind of get on the same page. So already we're seeing that partnership already, which is fantastic. I know they're going to have security on site. They're at the one on El Camino, 24/7 staff. And they're ready to get on the same page so we could work together. In our backyard, we have the Maple Street shelter, and I've probably gone there in the 10 years that I've been here, maybe a handful of times. They tend to police themselves for the most part, which is a good thing. And hopefully, out in Redwood Shores, it continues that way. And hopefully it doesn't become an issue. It hasn't, in my opinion, like I said, at the Maple Street shelter that's been there for years. Because like I said, they tend to take care of themselves. But again, I'm already working with the Samaritan House. I'm trying to get a hold of who the managers are. I'm trying to figure out what their game plans are. I'm trying to make sure that we can work together because I want to work with them. I want to make sure they have the resources that they need so that they can be successful. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they have our contact information and they could ensure that they could rely on us when they need us, if they ever do. So it's still in the beginning stages, but we're trying on our end to get on the same page so that one, we could respond to these type of questions, but two, I'm trying to prevent you know, I'm trying to keep us up to speed so that we're ready in case anything ever does happen at these locations.
Probably our last question is whether Redwood Shores Neighborhood Watch is still an ongoing program. The last was sort of public meeting out here. I believe Chris Rasmussen was on it, and I'm not sure that that has continued or slowly drifted off.
Yeah, I'll talk about this, Captain. So I've been in the community policing unit for a year, and as far as I know, it's almost they've all like shut down from what I've seen. Nobody's really reaching out. I know I talked to Sue about this. She was kind of wanting to restart it, and I think it's a great idea, but I also think that it could almost get reinvented, sort of. I mean, look at tonight. We have, I don't know how many participants participating and getting information. So it's a lot easier for us to have these type of meetings now that we're all used to Zoom and stuff like that. So, you know, my replacement that's coming in, it's definitely going to be something that I bring up, but it's definitely something that I want to work with that new person and tell them, hey, look, we need to contact our neighborhood associations and do these type of meetings on a more frequent basis so that we're all on the same page and we all know the issues that are going on. And if you think about it, this is almost like a big neighborhood watch meeting, right? I mean, I'm in an hour and a half between myself and Captain Osborne, we're able to talk to all of Redwood Shores, get you guys all up to speed with what's going on. We gave you guys contact numbers. We you know, you guys now have a face to the names and stuff like that. And you guys heard it from us. We're here to help. Please let us know if there's issues, and you guys know how to reach us and how to contact us. So to me, this is Neighborhood Watch. I think we just need to kind of keep this going. Thank you, Sue, for setting this up. I appreciate all of you for joining us. This is one of the biggest meetings that I've had, and I've done quite a few of these. And to me, that goes a long ways. That obviously tells me you guys care about Redwood Shores, you guys care about your neighborhoods, and that you guys want to work with us and keep your guys keep yourself safe. So thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just briefly speak to that, a lot of our outreach programming and partnerships with the community has been completely disrupted by COVID, as Jesse mentioned. We're going to have to work to get it all back online, and that's going to take some doing. I imagine there'll be some changes to some things because you have disruptions like this, and it allows you to maybe assess and focus on whether or not what you were doing was really effective, or do we bring it back as it was because it was working really well, and if it isn't broken, don't fix it, or could we do better? So I think we'll be assessing a lot of the various outreach programs and partnership programs that we have with the community as we come out of COVID and get things restarted. It's going to take some time. But I'm hopeful that at some point we're able to meet in person again. I'm hopeful that we don't have a cultural shift, that we all just accept that this is what we do from now on and Zoom in. I imagine Zoom's going to be a feature of a lot of our future meetings where there'll be options and have hybrid type meetings where you can come in person or you can come in via your computer. Personally, I hope we get back to a situation where I'm getting to meet with folks like all of you in person. I think it's certainly more interesting. I enjoy it more, and I think it's healthier for everybody to get to see each other face to face. So my goal would be to get back to a situation where we're having those meetings. I imagine there'll be an electronic component to it, but that we're able to see each other, communicate, get to know each other a little bit, and start working together again in partnership, because that's when we're most effective, is when we're partnering well with the community we serve. And I know we're anxious to get back to that model.
So on that note, one thing on a side note that I want to bring up, because I know a lot of people are wondering what's going on with the town suites, and I think the RSCA committee knows a lot. We've been meeting with the new group that is putting the program together. So what I can tell people is that we are definitely on as far as keeping track of what's going to happen over there, working very, very closely with the county and the new operator, which is MidPen. And there'll be information about about them in the pilot, and most likely there will be a meeting in April. We're trying to work out all the kinks, I guess you could say, because everything's trying to happen very quickly. One thing is that it's going to get a new name, and they said that the Redwood Shores community can come up with the name. So that'll be something that'll be in the pilot to figure out what are we going to name that complex over there. So with that said, in closing, on behalf of RSCA and the Shores community, I wanted to thank both of the officers for taking their time, and everybody else that's on the call, taking their time this evening. Greatly appreciated. I also wanted to mention, as far as Jesse Castro, he's receiving a very well-earned promotion. We're looking forward to our new person, but Jesse has been an asset to our community for some time, and I'm glad he's still staying around. But we just wanted to really thank Jesse for his hard work and working with us in all this time. He's really been a great help, and also Ashley. Other than that, I want to thank everybody for being on the call, and have a great evening.
Thank you and good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you guys.
Thank you.
Good night.